In the small, forgotten town of Blackwood, nestled deep within the dense, ancient woods, a sinister presence lingered. The townsfolk whispered of a haunting figure known only as the Shadowed Strangler. For years, the Shadowed Strangler had eluded capture, leaving a trail of gruesome murders in its wake. The town had grown numb to the fear, the terror, and the unending darkness that seemed to pervade every corner of their lives. The first victim was found in the heart of Blackwood. Sarah Bennett, a young woman of striking beauty, had disappeared without a trace, only to be discovered weeks later, her lifeless body hidden amongst the gnarled roots of an ancient oak tree. Her eyes were wide open in a silent scream, her hands bound tightly with coarse rope, and a crimson ribbon tied around her delicate neck. Detective Thomas Graves was assigned to the case, a man whose haunted eyes mirrored the secrets he had buried deep within himself. With a grim determination, he began his investigation, trying to make sense of the brutality that had befallen Sarah. He found himself poring over the pages of psychopathology books, trying to understand the twisted mind behind this sadistic killer. As the days turned into weeks, more bodies appeared. Each victim was bound, strangled, and adorned with a crimson ribbon, their vacant eyes telling tales of horror that words could never convey. The town of Blackwood fell into a state of perpetual fear. Every whisper of the wind and every rustle of leaves seemed to bear the chilling echoes of the Shadowed Strangler. One evening, Detective Graves received an anonymous tip. It led him to a decaying cabin deep within the woods, its windows shattered, and its door hanging precariously on rusted hinges. Inside, he found a room shrouded in darkness, the walls adorned with gruesome drawings and photographs of the victims. He knew he was close, too close to the heart of madness. The detective's flashlight flickered as he descended into the cabin's dimly lit basement. There, he discovered a hidden chamber, a gruesome tableau of horror. In the center stood a mannequin, its limbs bound with crimson ribbons, its eyes cold and lifeless. Surrounding it were photographs, each depicting one of the murdered women, posed in grotesque, unnatural positions. The realization hit Detective Graves like a sledgehammer. The Shadowed Strangler was not just a killer. He was an artist of torment, orchestrating a symphony of suffering with his victims. The room seemed to close in around him as he understood the depths of the darkness he was facing. As he explored further, he discovered a journal, its pages filled with the ramblings of a tormented mind. It spoke of a man who had been abandoned by society, cast aside like a shadow, and left to fester in the darkness. The diary detailed the killer's growing obsession with Sarah Bennett, how he had watched her from the shadows, entranced by her beauty, her innocence. In chilling detail, the journal recounted the night he had taken her, bound her, and strangled the life from her. It described the euphoria he felt as he watched the light in her eyes dim, a darkness consuming her that mirrored the abyss within himself. With trembling hands, Detective Graves flipped through the pages, realizing that the Shadowed Strangler had been documenting his descent into madness, his transformation from a man into a monster. It was a chilling confession, a glimpse into the mind of a killer who had become a slave to his own desires. As he left the cabin, Detective Graves knew he had to put an end to this reign of terror, to free Blackwood from the shackles of fear that had gripped it for so long. He could feel the weight of the town's hopes and fears resting on his shoulders, a burden that threatened to consume him. The following days were a blur of investigation and sleepless nights. The detective followed the twisted trail of the Shadowed Strangler, piecing together a profile of a man who had hidden in plain sight. A man who had become a master of disguise and deception. Then, one fateful night, as the moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows upon the town, Detective Graves received a call. The killer had been sighted near the old mill, a crumbling relic of Blackwood's past. With his heart pounding in his chest, the detective raced to the scene, determined to confront the darkness that had haunted their town for far too long. As he entered the mill, the air grew thick with tension. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the empty building, a haunting reminder of the lives that had been stolen by the Shadowed Strangler. Detective Graves knew that this was the final act, the climax of a twisted, macabre drama. In the dim light, he spotted a figure, its back turned to him. It was the killer, the man behind the crimson ribbons and the nightmares that had plagued Blackwood. The room seemed to vibrate with malevolence as Detective Graves approached, his gun drawn, his heart racing. "Stop!" he shouted, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face twisted by madness, eyes devoid of humanity. The killer's lips curled into a grotesque smile, and in his hand he held a crimson ribbon, the symbol of his deranged obsession. "Ah, Detective Graves," the killer hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "I've been waiting for you." In that moment, the room seemed to close in around them, and Detective Graves felt as though he had stepped into the heart of darkness itself. The final confrontation had begun, a deadly dance between a man of justice and a creature of the night. As the tension reached its peak, the mill seemed to come alive with whispers, the voices of the victims calling out for justice. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, and Detective Graves realized that he was not just facing a killer, but a force of pure evil. The room erupted into chaos as the two men clashed, a battle between light and darkness, sanity and madness. The killer moved with a supernatural grace, his movements fluid and unnatural. Detective Graves fired shot after shot, but the killer seemed impervious to pain, driven by a madness that defied reason. In the end, it was a stroke of luck that saved Detective Graves. The killer, in a moment of careless arrogance, stumbled over a rotting beam, giving the detective the opening he needed. With a final desperate shot, he brought the killer down, ending the nightmare that had plagued Blackwood for so long. As dawn broke over the town, Detective Graves stood amidst the ruins of the old mill. The weight of the darkness that had consumed their town finally lifted. The townsfolk could breathe again. The specter of the Shadowed Strangler banished to the annals of history. But Detective Graves knew that the scars of that night would never truly heal. The horrors he had witnessed, the darkness he had confronted, would haunt him forever. As he walked away from the mill, he couldn't help but wonder if the true evil had been vanquished, or if it had merely retreated, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. For in the depths of the human soul, he knew the darkness always lingered, ready to emerge when the shadows grew long and the night grew cold. Blackwood had been saved, but the true horror, the true darkness, could never truly be erased. And so, as the town of Blackwood moved on, its scars still visible but slowly fading, the memory of the Shadowed Strangler lived on, a chilling reminder of the capacity for darkness that dwelled within us all.